It's Modal Monday. We're back, and I wanted to talk today about the Mixolydian mode. This is the fifth mode of the major scale. So if you know your major scale, such as C, and you start it on the fifth note, G. This is C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Okay, I'm going to start on C, D, E, F, G. I'm going to play from G to G. G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So the feature here of this scale is that there is a flat 7 in relation to the major mode. So if I do it from this G, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Right? So if you know your major scale, now you can convert your major scale into Mixolydian mode by playing this back to C. Instead of this, 7th note, B, play a B flat, right? Alright, now you have your Mixolydian mode. So probably the second or first most useful mode in jazz music, I'm going to say. I know that's a bold statement, but probably so. If you see in your music you're playing a 7th chord, such as C7, then you want to access this mode. Right? Because in your C7 chord, 1, 3, 5, the 7th is flat. So you don't want to be playing the major scale against this chord, or else you're going to get that bad note. You're going to get B natural and B flat against each other, which, yeah, that's a bad sound. I know jazz is a wide open field here of many great sonic choices, but that's not one we generally choose. Yep, you want to use your Mixolydian mode against your 5/7 or your 7th chord. So if you have G7, it's not G major, it's G Mixolydian with that flat 7th, right? These are called 5/7 chords, usually noted just G7. These are not major 7th chords. So later on, I'm going to have to do a video about major 7th versus 5/7, also known as dominant chords. A big distinction, and can be pretty confusing for new students. My students and I, we talk about the distinction between these two often. All right, now there's some usage here. So the way I want to talk about the Mixolydian mode a little more is in blues music, and specifically jazz blues. So I'm going to make a small distinction here. And when we're playing jazz blues, jazz players are more often following what's called the changes, meaning they're playing the chord tones within, they're improvising with tones within each chord, meaning if they see G7, we're accessing those notes from the chord, right? And I'm going to make this distinction here. Often when we're playing blues with blues players, that distinction does not always happen. So if there's a G chord, they might just be... So maybe just G pentatonic is happening, right? And when you play jazz music, don't do that. You play the chord tones, right? This is a long history of players back to the beginning of jazz, but especially in the bebop era, this really developed into the way we play jazz. You access those tones from the chords, right? So that's where this Mixolydian mode comes into play. So as you heard me playing it earlier, that was a G blues, right? So I'll just play it a little bit for you. This is G blues again. It's in a 6/8 feel. G7. I'm playing B natural, Mixolydian. Okay, something happens in the blues on the measure 5, right? So you go to the 4 chord, which is the C7 chord. So I'm going to use my Mixolydian mode, and now I'm going to merge it into that scale you heard earlier. More of the blues or pentatonic scale. And the real distinction here between these two scales is what I'm trying to get into. So the Mixolydian mode has a major third. The blues scale, or the pentatonic scale, has the minor third. This is the distinction between B natural and B flat. This is, in my opinion, what the blues is really about in a technical sense, right? Other than the chord progression, which is unique in its own way. So what I'm going to do when I get to that measure 5 and I get to my C7, I'm going to change my Mixolydian scale. My note B flat is going to become B natural, right? The B natural is the 7th note of the C7 chord, right? And my B natural is the 3rd note of the 1 chord, or the G7 chord. So in jazz, again, we're accessing what we often call thirds and sevenths. These are the notes that determine the quality of the chords. And if you're playing those notes at the right time, it shows to other players that you actually understand the progression and you know where you are in the progression. So little landmarks here, right? So I'll go back and I'll demonstrate from the beginning. Again, the G blues in 6/8. B natural. Still B natural. And B flat. Back to G7. Here's the 5 chord. I'm ignoring that. Back to G7. Still G7 chord, right? B natural. See, I made the change. All right, so you see in this blues, this is a really simple way to access this Mixolydian mode and then make the small change to the flat third, right? So showing that you're at the 4 chord. Instead of the obvious, the other way, which would be ignoring all of that and just playing some pentatonic scale throughout. So you might like that sound, right? At moments it has its place, but having this more sophisticated change gives us a little more depth into the chords and what's happening in the actual tune, right? Okay, yeah, what else are we gonna say about Mixolydian mode? Of course, the usage of both thirds is important, right, in the sound of the blues. So I'm often using the lower one. I'm using that lower one as kind of an ornament, right? Right? So that makes a lot of sense, but you still want to emphasize the B flat when you get to that chord. So I'll use the lower third as sort of an ornamental note in this case, and you hear it, that it has a great sound, right? Here we go. 5, 6. But now you can bend to it, of course, right? Just to turn around. All right, so using the Mixolydian scale in jazz, right? Just to sum up again, I did it in blues and I played my Mixolydian scale when I had the 1 chord, right? When I got to the 4 chord, I made the change in the scale by using the flat third, which is in the 4 chord, right? All right, I'm going to add on to this video with a little bit, a few more examples of the Mixolydian mode in other music, in rock music. Hope that makes sense and helps you out. All right, let me know if you have questions. Bye for now. All right, just wanted to make a tag-along video here at the end with some examples of the Mixolydian mode in music. And I was thinking right away here with rock music. That's what I grew up listening to, which I still enjoy listening to. So I was thinking more about it, and it's really ubiquitous in rock music. This Mixolydian mode is all over the place. This part really exists just because I wanted to use the word ubiquitous. So here we go. Here's the first example. D, E, right? Flat 7, 1. Yes, it's also in the blues scale, so it could potentially be from the blues scale. But I'm considering those in 2 scales, Mixolydian and blues, in the same vein as we talked about earlier. And you might have heard that sound, right? The most rock sound ever. Did I say that was a whole lot of love? Whole lot of love, right? And then that would be Black Sabbath, War Pigs, right? Continuing on, how about Rush, Limelight. It's B, B, A. Right? That whole step again, whole steps. Okay, moving on, let's do a little 90s music. So in the 90s music, here's the grungiest chord we had. It's an F sharp major chord, sometimes with some open strings. And if you played this chord from the 90s in your grunge music, you had to do E, F, right? Major chord, open strings on top, E, F. That's like an Alice in Chains kind of vibe, you know? All right, let's clean it up a little bit for the last example. This is a chord progression, so instead of just kind of power chords or whatever, we're filling out into some more open chords. So this is from 1987, I think this is Paradise City, Guns N' Roses. G chord, C, F, flat 7th chord, right? C, G. So instead of F sharp, we have F, then a C, goes back to 1 there, G major. So yeah, just cool deriving that flat 7th chord, major chord from the Mixolydian mode. Hope you enjoyed this video. See you next time for perhaps Dorian mode.